is I've entered into a lease agreement for a particular property. I thereafter discovered that my landlord is actually a tenant and has not been paying my rent that I've been paying to him over to the actual owner. I have received now an eviction application and I don't know what to do. I have never missed a rental payment. What can I do in this regard? Cilna?
That's a very sad story. Really, this is one of the worst questions we've ever had, because, I mean, we've had questions where I felt like, oh my goodness, shame, you're in a very unfortunate situation. But this is like a next level unfortunate situation, simply because the viewer says he's been paying his rent diligently, which is not something really currently. We only see from about 83% tenants are currently in good standing. So it's one of the nice tenants that's paying rent, and now there's the problem is you are deriving your right of occupation through and under the tenant, not the landlord. So if the landlord cancels the lease agreement with the main tenant, so your landlord, unfortunately your right of occupation has been cancelled as well. And the fact that that he didn't pay the rent over to the landlord obviously is the reason why the landlord placed him on terms and cancelled. And unfortunately, from what I'm hearing, the process was followed correctly, and I'm quite sure the eviction will be done correctly. If it's SSLR or Bruno, Simao, or Marshall, well beloved, I'm very sorry if we are actually the ones evicting our viewer, but unfortunately, legally, Bruno, you're enjoying that diplomatic mention way too much. But unfortunately, I've seen situations like that where I talk to somebody and then later I realized, oh my goodness, we're actually the firm evicting them. So I'm sorry if it is us, but legally, that would be the correct process. And unfortunately, the fact that you've paid your rent and the tenant didn't pay it over to the landlord doesn't change the position in law in any way. You derive your right from the tenant, not the landlord, and that is the problem. So advice for future, I can't help you in this situation. Unfortunately, my advice to you would be contact the attorneys that's doing the eviction. Tell them you will be vacating by the end of December or whatever the case might be, to avoid any legal costs running up, because unfortunately you are a respondent in the proceedings. That I do hope that they have a catch-all respondent, being all other occupants of the property. And if you go to the attorney and you say, I will either just vacate or abide by the order, provided that I don't have a cost order against me, then you can get away with this in a way that you vacate. And I know that's not what you want, but unfortunately that's what's going to have to happen. But then at least you can stay away from court. You avoid the risk of a cost order against you, and it's unfortunately the only thing in law you can do. That's the only practical advice I have for now. But for future reference, when you contract, guys, it is so important to do the necessary vetting as the tenant as well. The landlord does a lot of vetting, and he checks the tenant's records and everything. A tenant has an obligation to do due diligence. You can't go to a property and then later find out you're not contracting with the correct party, but you've never done a deed search on the property. Or you say, I don't want to be here, I have no cell phone signal. Before you sign a lease agreement, guys, please, 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 do proper vetting as a tenant as well, proper due diligence. Go to the property, call your mum from the property so you can see if there's proper cell phone signal. Post something on YouTube, try and watch a YouTube clip, see if there's proper internet connection, proper cell phone, all the things that's important to you as a tenant. There's no obligation by a landlord to give a property to a tenant in a condition that he wants it. The problem is, I think we sometimes confuse rentals with like a hotel stay or a Airbnb situation where there is a certain expectation that the landlord or owner must uphold, which is not the case with a rental. So for future reference, before you sign a lease agreement with the landlord, either ask the landlord for a deed search of the property or just do a deed search yourself, and just make sure you're contracting with the correct party. But I'm really sorry, and my advice is really get in contact with those attorneys as quickly as humanly possible to avoid the risk of a cost order against you.
Thank you so much, Cilna. Oh, Bruno, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, so maybe just another quick pragmatic solution. So remember, a lot of these subtenant situations exist because people don't actually know what's happening. So sometimes the landlord won't even know that there's a subtenant, like a subtenant on the property. So they'll try and they'll just be trying to kick out a random person. Some landlords I know barely even make the effort and don't go knock on the door to try to figure out who's actually staying there. Especially if it's landlords that have that own multiple properties. So a pragmatic solution, and if it is Cilna or I that are attending to the eviction, it's something that I normally entertain, or I normally at least I take to my client. But remember, especially nowadays, if you're looking at a delinquency rate of like 17% when it comes to payment of rentals, finding good tenants isn't always easy. So I do know that some landlords will go, oh, wait, hold on, you're at the property and you're paying rent and you've never defaulted and you're paying what amount of money now? Because if a person's subletting, there's a very good chance that they're making a margin off this, right? I would strongly suggest contact the attorneys and say, well, look, here's the lease that I have at the moment. So yes, I know that you can kick me out, but do you want to kick me out? How about you take this lease, put it in yours and let's just carry on with this. And there's a chance. So unless other circumstances exist where the landlord wants to move into the property or something along those lines, that's probably a decent solution. Or yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Cilna. Thank you, Bruno, for that.